Welcome to Everyone Loves Guitar, where we get to sit down and talk with interesting professional guitar players and related music industry experts. If you love playing guitar, stick around. You're in the right place. Hey, this is Craig Garber. You know me as host of the Everyone Loves Guitar podcast, but when I'm not interviewing world-class guitar players, I'm busy helping clients with their marketing. In fact, since March of 2000, I've helped over 300 clients in 108 different industries all over the world sell everything from $20 books to $5,000 seminar seats and everything in between. I even authored a book about my experience called How to Make Maximum Money with Minimum Customers. And now I'm giving away a free marketing strategy session to business owners who qualify. If you can answer yes to any one of these three questions, then this free marketing strategy session will seriously change your business and your cash flow. Here are the three questions. Number one, have you done okay for yourself, but realize you haven't even come close to maximizing your full potential? And is this starting to bother you more and more as time goes on? Number two, would you like to start charging a lot more for your goods and services and only have to deal with those customers or clients who are willing and excited about paying you what you're really worth? And three, have you ever thought to yourself, gosh, if I could ever figure out how to attract more qualified leads simply by differentiating myself from the competition, I'd be making a small fortune right now. If you answered yes to any one of these questions, then this free marketing strategy session is for you. And don't worry, this isn't some sort of disguised cheesy sales pitch. Look, you'll be amazed how a few simple tweaks can change your business so dramatically. And this improvement, along with the increase in net cash flow that results, is what allows you to retire comfortably, put your kids through college, and take those much-needed vacations whenever you want to get away without having to think about, can we really afford this now? So book your free marketing strategy session with me right now by going to everyonelovesguitar.com/marketing. Again, to book your free marketing strategy session with me, go to everyonelovesguitar.com/marketing right now. Thanks for listening. Now let's get on with the show. Hey everybody, this is Craig Garber from Everyone Loves Guitar, and we are here with a fantastic, really cool guy, Rick Holmstrom. Rick is born and raised in Fairbanks, Alaska. I've now got both guitar players that have grown up in Alaska on this show, Rick, and then I had David Meyer several months back. Anyway, Rick grew up surrounded by the sounds of 50s rock, 60s surf and folk, and the Beatles. His dad was actually a DJ, and he took Rick to see Chuck Berry at an early age. But Rick was a jock during his teenage years, not a guitarist. So it wasn't until senior year at college that guitar began to take over when Rick joined a band playing blues and roots music at parties. Roots music. In 87, he graduated college, moved to L.A., where he was a freelance reporter by day, haunting the city's funkiest blues clubs at night to observe, sit in, and learn. His budding talent was recognized by William Clark, who then took him on tour. Eventually, the road won out over journalism, and Rick became fully immersed in the blues scene. He worked with local luminaries Johnny Dyer, Smokey Wilson, and Rod Piazza, as well as legends Jimmy Rogers, Billy Boy Arnold, and R.L. Burnside, and we'll talk about some of those guys. In 96, he released his first record under his own name called Lookout, followed at the millennium's turn by Gonna Get Wild on Tone Cool, then by Hydraulic Groove in 2002. In 2007, he released Late in the Night, and just as he and longtime band were about to hit the road in support of that album Late in the Night, he got called to back up gospel soul legend Mavis Staples, fresh off the release of her critically acclaimed record, We'll Never Turn Back. Rick and his Late in the Night trio hit the road with Mavis, accompanying her on live Hope at the Hideout in 2008. So wait a minute. So you opened for Mavis, then you played with her.
Yes.
Wow.
That was a whole crazy story right there. You want to go into that now or later?
Well, let me finish this little one sentence left.
Yeah.
I didn't realize.
Okay.
I just realized that now. The dime just dropped here. And for you millennials, the dime just dropped means that like years ago, you put a dime into a telephone booth and it would drop, so like the dime just dropped. It's a metaphor for, oh, I just got it. The band became so tight playing together. They all played on Mavis's next album, You Are Not Alone, and it wound up winning these guys a Grammy in 2010. The same trio came together again on Cruel Sunrise, Rick's latest and best record yet. Rick, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Craig. Thanks for having me. This is fun.
And we just started.
It's going to be fun.
No, this is like, let me just like tell people the backstory. I'm not going to tell them the whole thing, but like, so here's what happened. I was talking to Rick. This is why we're like laughing. I was talking to Rick over the weekend. We were just like nailing down the schedule because we had to move it. And so my wife was overseas in the UK visiting her family. And I sent a text to her like, hey, honey, I really miss you. Can't wait to see you. And like a few minutes later, I get a text and I had just been talking to Rick and I was telling him I was outside smoking a cigar. It was like in the evening. And I get a text. He goes, hey, it's Rick. Are you cigar high? And I'm like, huh? And then I look and I realize I didn't send that text to my wife. I sent it to Rick.
Yes.
So
yeah, luckily it wasn't one of those like, hey, honey, can't wait to.
Yeah. And it just as well might have. It was quite like random luck that it wasn't. So we were just laughing about that before. So this is what the carryover laughter, which is always good to have carryover laughter, right? Life's tough enough. But man, thank you for coming on. Tell me about the story. I didn't realize that you were opening for Mavis and then playing with her. Man, what a night.
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of a crazy, the whole getting together with Mavis is, it's good. It's an incredible story, really. I mean, I'll give you since we're doing this interview and it's kind of, on the, there's no time constraints, I suppose. I'll give you the whole story because some people have parts of it, and think they know what happened. And basically what happened was I used to record for this label called Tone Cool Records. And there was a young guy that worked there, that I worked with, who left right at the right time. He left the record company business. His name's Dave Bartlett, and he went into management. And his first client that he managed was Mavis. Mm-hmm. And this was like back before she got with Anti Records and back before she even was with Alligator for one record. And so he starts managing her and, telling me, hey, I really think it would be cool to pair you up with Mavis. He wasn't crazy about her band at the time, really good players, but they weren't matching up with what she was doing at the time. And I said, yeah, man, I'm a huge Staples Singers fan. I'd love to do that. But I don't want to hear anything about it right now. And I don't want to hear anything about it until it actually happens, because I know that this means a couple guys aren't going to be doing their regular gig anymore, just like it.
Yeah.
Anyway,
yeah.
It's kind of okay, sounds great. I'm in if it ever happens, but I kind of thought it would never happen. But in the meantime, they had me play with Mavis at what were called the Handy Awards, or now the Blues Music Awards in Memphis. And it was just myself and Mavis. We played 2 or 3 songs together at this award show, and that went well. And then a few months later, they asked us to open for her on the Santa Monica Pier, just my band. The Santa Monica has this Thursday night summer concert series. It's free on the pier, and it's just huge. Thousands of people come out to these things. And here we are up there playing, our 45-minute set or something like that. And we're about to get done, and I look over to my right, and the promoter of the show is urging me to keep going. And I'm thinking, oh my God, really? Okay, these people want to hear "Respect Yourself" and "I'll Take You There." They don't want to hear me. And so I play a couple more songs. I look over at him, and he's like, keep going. This is bizarre. What's going on? We're going over an hour now. And so finally he signals me to come down, and I go over and talk to him. He's telling me, well, Mavis is here, but her band got stuck at LAX and they're late. Do you think you can talk with Mavis and play with her for a few songs? So we go backstage, and I said, well, yeah, sure, we could do this. Mavis, do you sing some blues? No, I don't sing no blues. She says, oh, God, really? What are we going to do? So we cobbled together maybe 3 or 4 songs, and we played with her, and it went pretty well. And when her guys showed up, we basically handed them sticks and guitar cables, and they plugged in and sat down and finished the set. And the whole time that all of this was going on, there was a guy, you know how when you have a stage that's like constructed in a parking lot, it's kind of, there's some steps leading up to it. It's a temporary stage.
Yes.
You know, and so there's this guy standing on these steps with these big yellow glasses and looking up at me, yelling stuff at me while I was playing. And I didn't know. I just thought, man, this guy, who is this guy? He looks kind of odd. And as I'm walking down the steps, this guy that had been yelling at me taps me on the shoulder, and it's Ry Cooder.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And that's why Mavis was in town, because Mavis was recording this record that Ry was producing called We'll Never Turn Back. And Ry loved us, even though we barely knew the songs. He kept coming up to me the rest of the night, like asking me about my rig and do you have records? And I went and grabbed a few of my records and gave them to him. And apparently he was talking about us in the studio the next week when he was finishing up the record with Mavis. Like, I really like that band that didn't even know your songs. And so anyway, then they had me play just myself and Mavis and a percussionist play on the NAACP Image Awards another couple of months later on TV. And that went well. And then finally, that's when Mavis pulled me aside and said, all right, you ready to make some racket? Get your band together. Let's do this. So that's kind of how that story happened.
So your three guys, you and your trio, you and the other two guys that are in your trio became Mavis's band. Yeah.
She just basically, I'm the musical director. I guess they call it band leader. And she just said, get your guys and let's do this. So then it was, I hired Jeff Termas and Stephen Hodges were playing with me on bass and drums. And then I knew this guy, Donnie Gerard, a great singer who I'd seen singing in various like R&B groups in LA. And then we've gone through 3 different female background singers. Right now we have Vicki Randall for the last, 5-6 years, something like that. We've had her. And for a while we had Mavis's sister Yvonne up until about 3 years ago. And she just recently passed away a few weeks ago.
Sorry about that.
But, it's basically a trio with, Jeff, the bass player, and myself sing. And then we have 2 full-time, background singers. It's a trio and a lot of voices.
So do you still open up every tour for her, every show?
Oh, no. That was just a one-off oddball thing. I mean, she a lot of times turns it over to me in the middle of the set and just takes a rest, and then I play a guitar instrumental. But no, we don't. Well, I mean, that was one of the things that the manager and I both agreed on early on was that we didn't want to do that thing like when you go and see. I mean, I've saw so many blues and R&B acts, Bobby Bland, on and on and on, where the band would come out and play a bunch of songs before the main person came up. And I guess in the old days, that was a cool thing, but I saw a bunch of them where it was just like, God, please bring so-and-so up,
Yeah, I get you.
I really wanted it to be a thing where it was like, people, boom, right from the beginning, there's Mavis, and she's totally engaged and ready to go right at the, downbeat.
So you guys don't usually have an opener then? Mavis is the highlighter, the opener and the closer?
Oh, no, I mean, there's sometimes where the promoter will put an opening act on before us. Sure. it just depends on the promoter, but we don't go up and do like a few instrumentals and then call her up. It's
Gotcha.
not like that.
Gotcha. Very cool, man. Thank you for sharing that story. So I want to talk about another story, and let me just give people the gist of it, and then you could give me your take or your experience with it. So one day, oh gosh, this is probably a year or two ago, I was randomly listening to an interview on NPR, and I think I came in midway through it, and the content was just really good, so I stuck it out. And it was Mavis telling her story about how when Pop Staples, her dad, and her, was it 3 sisters and a brother?
Well, at that time, it was 2 sisters and a brother, with them.
Okay. So it was the Staple Singers, and they were driving in a car somewhere in the South. Was it North Carolina? I don't really remember where it was, Rick.
No, they were in Tennessee, Memphis.
Okay. So they're driving through Memphis, and basically the gist of the story is they got pulled over, or they went into a gas station, I think the story was, and they then came out and accused the dad of doing something, or they accused his son of doing something. It was just like it was like some ridiculous racially motivated accusation. And if I remember the story right, it was, they were going to send him to jail or harass him or beat the crap. It was just like a really scary situation for these 3 little kids that are in there, or the girls were little anyway. Well, go ahead.
Yeah. I've been with Mavis for 11, 12 years now. And every day, whether we're in a hotel lobby waiting for our rooms to get ready, or we're in at a gate on an airport, or, sound check, backstage, you name it. There's just all these places where we're constantly just passing time with her in the studio. So there's a million of these stories, and I really wish I had written more of them down. I wish I had a photographic memory. I haven't. I wish I had. But that one, my experience with that story is that we had a gig in Oxford, Mississippi a few years back. We flew into Memphis, and we drove up to Oxford, played the gig, and then drove back to Memphis that night to stay in a hotel in Memphis. And as we're getting to Memphis, I don't know what, it was probably 1, 2 o'clock in the morning, something like. Mavis was sitting in the back behind, in the seat right behind me. She taps me on the shoulder. She goes, Rick, that's, I think it's 3rd and Union or 6th and Union. I forgot what the streets was. I said, yeah. She goes, that's where that gas station was. I said, oh, and what happened was that it was in the middle of the night, and they stopped to get gas, and Mavis filled up the tank, and she went inside to pay, and she had the nerve, I think the deal was, she had the nerve to ask for a receipt or something crazy like that.
Yes.
And the attendant called her the N-word and said something awful to her. And she came out and mentioned this to her dad, Pops. And Pops went in there and got in an argument with the guy and clocked him. Like, just clocked him. and it comes, scurrying back out. Get in the car and drive. Let's go. We got to get out of here. And they went across the bridge over into Helena, Arkansas. As they're crossing over into Arkansas, sure enough, all these cops pulled them over. And I'm telling this story secondhand. So, there they are with all these cops and dogs and everything, and the cops go into the trunk of the Cadillac that they're driving, and there's all this money from the gig, and and they're trying to explain, like, Pops is trying to explain to them, like, we're singers and we just got done doing a run of shows and we played blah, blah, blah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, sure. Okay. Yeah. Like, you ripped this money off, didn't you? And so they brought him to the jail in Arkansas. And while they were there, somebody was sweeping up in the jail and looks up. This older black guy looks up and says, "Pop Staples, what you doing in here?" And Mavis tells the story really scared out of her mind. It's kind of, there's funny elements to it now, like that, but this was something that she really thought that was it. She seriously thought they could be lynched. This might be it for them. And luckily they got out. Maybe it was because, I don't know. I mean, it's possible that it's because the authorities realized that if they did something to the Staples singers, that they'd have they'd be in a lot of trouble. A lot of people would get upset. But I mean, there's just so many times when I'm with Mavis, she'll start to tell us stories about Stevie Wonder or Aretha Franklin or her brother Purvis and Lou Rawls hanging out. I mean, there's times where I'm on stage with Mavis and she's having a rough night. Let's just say she has a cold or she's tired, and she knows that her voice isn't quite happening that night, and she gets down. You can see it. The audience probably can't tell, but I can tell, like, something's not right. She's bumming out, and I'll look over and I'll just kind of come up, because I stand right next to her. I'll look over and lean down to her and I go, "Mavis, Sam Cooke isn't here tonight." And she'll look up at me and she goes, yeah, you're right. And because to her, it's like she came up around all these great singers and all this amazing African-American soul, gospel, blues, R&B history. And if she's having a night where she thinks she's at 25%, she doesn't realize that most people don't know that,
Sure.
And even at her 25%, it's still, with all the feeling and soul that she puts into it, most people are going to come away going, "That was incredible."
Right.
So I don't know. I mean, I'm sorry. I don't know if that's the best answer to that question that you had, but
it's great.
It's pretty amazing.
I always marvel at how the people in the music business, it's just like the business world, as a guy coming out of the business world, it's, what you're talking about is just her work ethic, and the people that are the most successful are generally most successful because they're so freaking demanding.
Yeah, I mean, she's demanding of herself. She really hardly ever says anything to us. I mean, she might speak up if something was a little too loud, or if she wants to try a little different arrangement or dynamic on something. But where her work ethic comes in is that if we're home for, say, more than a week, and let's say I have a trio gig here locally in Southern California, and she's on my email list, she'll write back to me, "I miss you guys. I'm gonna come down and sit in." She lives in Chicago.
You're kidding me. That is awesome.
I know she's not going to travel all the way out to sit in with us, but that she gets stir crazy, and it's all she's known since she was really. I mean, she started singing with her family, I think, when she was 8, and started, I think, recording when she was 10 or 11, and then they could only go out on short little local trips until she got out of high school. But that's a long time. I mean, I've been doing it since I was 23. Can you imagine doing it since you were 8?
Well, I'm being her age. So you're talking about something like 70 years of doing this. It's got to be like breathing at this point in time.
Yeah, I mean, and she just recently lost her older sister, Yvonne, who sang with us for, the first, I think, 7-8 years that I was with the band. I mean, with Mavis. And, this was only a few weeks ago. She had a mourning period. There was a service that we went out to in Chicago. We missed a couple of weekends of gigs, but she's right back at it now. And it's like she knows this is what she's meant to do. And she has a gift, and part of what that gift is to make people, think and feel uplifted. And so it makes her feel right to get out there and give this gift to people. And it's not some phony, I have a gift. This is like real serious, for real stuff,
No, you're not trotting yourself out at 78 to stroke your ego.
Yeah.
That's clear, man.
Totally. I mean, my mom is 5 or 6 years younger than Mavis, and she's a very active lady. And I can't imagine her having to do this, So it's I can't believe. I'm so fortunate that we're still doing this. So grateful,
Well, one thing you mentioned, you said Mavis never gets on you, and I don't know you real well, but you seem pretty intense as it relates to what you do. Your meter is high as far as like your performance meter. So I would think the reason she doesn't get on you is because she doesn't need to, because you're all over yourself and your guys already. And I don't mean that in a negative way. I mean, you have expectations and you want shit done right.
Yeah, everybody in the band has we're all pretty much our own worst critics, and we'll have a gig where the crowd is chanting, Mavis, Mavis, or whatever, and we're just sitting back there going, God, I blew this, or daggone it, I did that, or how did I screw that up, But it's all it's like you win some, you lose some. There's nights where, like, we just had a gig a couple weekends ago where we had been off for a while because of Yvonne's passing, and we came back thinking, boy, this is going to be rough. We are going to be, and Mavis was on fire. It was one of the best shows. I really wish we were in Cincinnati, and it was like, why weren't we recording that show? So you just can't tell. The day can go perfect. You can be perfectly prepared. You can have the best meal. You can have time with your kids and your wife, and then go to a show, and it can be horrible. Or you can be out of your mind, psychedelic, tired. You haven't got more than 3 hours in sleep for a week, and it can be the best night you've ever had.
Yeah, you just never know, I guess. That's the magic of, the universe, or whatever you want to call it, when stuff's on and it's not.
I mean, honestly, I think sometimes it's better to be a little loopy, just because you get off of your habits, and it causes you to lose your place for a second, and that can spur something that you didn't, it's just a good thing.
I've heard that more from musicians than the other. So that's a pretty common, from a creativity. Yeah, that's a very common. I hear that all the time. That's where you get the magic.
I think if you're prepared and you've done the work and you know the songs inside and out, and you have options, with Mavis, a lot of what our thing is options, because every night is different. We don't know if it's going to be the second verse next, or is she going to jump ahead to the chorus or the bridge, or is this going to be a guitar solo where there should be a this and or that. And so we're constantly creating, okay, if she does this again, be ready to hang on the one until that happens. And when you get that kind of a thing where you can look to your left and see the other people in the band and know exactly what is going to happen on a split second, if something becomes kind of loopy and off and and it can be just the thing you needed. But to have it, to be able to land on your feet in those instances, there has to be a good deal of preparation, underneath all that.
That sounds like a real exciting, fun trip as opposed to doing I mean, for me anyway, I hate to do the same thing in general over and over again. So I couldn't, it's like they've had all these cartoons of, so-and-so. I don't watch Family Guy, but I've seen little memes of stuff like that online, like it's Journey playing, Don't Stop Believing for the, 9,000th time. And when you're doing that stuff, as you guys are doing, how cool is that to not know what you're going to do next? That's the way it gets fun for you, I would imagine.
Yeah. I mean, it's really free form. It's a feeling based thing. It's the gospel. It doesn't matter if we're singing Let's Do It Again by Curtis Mayfield. It's definitely not a gospel song. Mavis still gets the gospel feeling going, and so we try to leave her room to improvise and to be herself, but then still have enough things going on to where we're putting on a show that's not just completely ragtag,
Sure.
But if we try to hammer in too much, it kills the spirit. So, you might come to see a show and you might go, wow, they're pretty loose. That was a little ragged right there. But it's better that we be like that than to be all, tight as a, whatever you want to say, and not have the feeling there for her.
Absolutely, man. Hey, let me ask you this. When you left Fairbanks and you moved to LA and you got involved in journalism, I was curious, what prompted you to move to LA and why journalism? What was attractive about that to you?
Well, that's kind of an accident in a way. I mean, growing up in Fairbanks, Alaska, I grew up in cold, and 72 below zero was the coldest that I can remember.
You're kidding me. You're not joking. You're serious.
No, I remember going by the First National Bank of Fairbanks neon sign, and seeing minus 72 degrees when I was a kid.
I don't even know how to
it's the kind of weather. Yeah, it's kind of weather where you come out, let's say you just took a shower and your hair just goes, and it's just icicles just like that. But it's all I knew. And my parents grew up there also. I love Fairbanks. I go back every summer. We have a cabin about 45 miles outside of Fairbanks on a lake that I bring my family to for about a week every summer. My mom and I have a sister and stepfather that still live up Fairbanks. But, I wanted to go to somewhere warm, and I had spent some time in Southern California with a college basketball coach friend of mine that was also from Fairbanks. And so I kind of made up my mind that I wanted to go to school in Southern California. I went to University of Redlands. It's about an hour east of LA.
Hold on a minute.
I played 4 years of...
Do you know John Jorgensen? He went to University of Redlands.
Yeah, I don't know John. It's bizarre that I don't, because I have so many friends that do. And I knew that he went to Redlands, and I think his dad was even a professor at Redlands.
His dad was a band leader. Yeah, and he's like, I think we're all the same age or real close to the same age. So yeah, he's got to be in your age bracket. That's wild.
I've got friends that are super tight with John, and I've just never met him. But anyway, I went to Redlands because it was a liberal arts school with a really good reputation, and I knew it's a Division III NCAA program, so scholarships. I had to take out huge student loans. I worked construction every summer in Alaska. Worked like as many hours as every hour that I could overtime, trying to pay for this school because it's a private school. Mm-hmm. And it was like 1,500 students. I played 4 years of small college basketball. I met my wife there. Today is our 24th anniversary, by the way.
Dude, congratulations. That is so cool.
Thanks. We've been We've been together for 34 years, but we've been married for 24 of them.
Hold on a minute, man. 34 years. That is so awesome, man. Congratulations to you guys.
Met in 1984. She was a sophomore. She lived right underneath me in the dorm. I used to bounce my basketball on the floor to try to get her attention. Anyway, yeah, I majored in business marketing emphasis with a minor in political science. Had a ball playing 4 years of basketball. I actually got to play. Like if I had gone Division I or maybe Division II, I would have sat the bench. I might not have hardly ever played, but I played, which is it was a great experience for me. I didn't know what in the world I wanted to do. I was a typical kid, not only coming out of high school, but coming out of college.
Okay, so you said you had a marketing major and a minor in poli-sci, so it sounds like you're thinking about maybe becoming like a business attorney or something like that?
I had no idea. I mean, I honestly, at that age, I thought, first of all, just going to college right out of high school, I think it's the stupidest thing that you do. But most people do it, and you're in a big hurry. So I was, oh God, seems like your whole time from about the time you're about 10 years old all the way up till you're about 25 or 30 is to hurry up and get older. And
it's weird, isn't it?
It is weird. And it's such a mistake, I think. I wish that the thing would, I wish high school kids had to like join the Peace Corps or, go work in Argentina or, Bolivia or I don't know where, just somewhere, get out of your comfort zone, go somewhere that's completely different from what you've experienced and travel and learn. But, it costs money and everybody's in a big hurry to make money. So, I majored in business and marketing with a minor in poli-sci, maybe thinking I would go back to Alaska and get work somehow, maybe go into politics because my dad was involved in kind of like the media side of politics in Alaska. But what happened was my senior year of college, I took this class called Professional Nonfiction Writing. And it was by a professor named Bruce McAllister, who was a really good writer himself, wrote a book called Dream Baby that was a great book. And right away in the class, my dad had given me a journal when I was 13. So I've kept a journal all, to this day. I go through periods where I don't write in it as much as I wish I did, but I have stacks of journals going way back. And so,
wait a minute. So let me address that because I have heard that so many times, and I have tried it. And I'm a writer. I mean, that's what I do. I write ad copy, and I don't write like prose, but I'm very comfortable writing. I mean, extremely comfortable, and I've done tons of it over the last 20 years. But I've never. What do you, I know there are people that are interested in this, so I don't mind deviating for a minute. I don't want to know like the content of what you write, but like what is topically, like, do you do that once a night when you're on, or do you just put down thoughts? Do you put down events?
For me, it's always been, it started off, my dad gave me this little red, tiny little book, and it was right before the summer started, and I was 13, I just turned 13 or 14, I forgot. And it was kind of more like a training log. Like he wanted me to write down all the practicing I was doing, because I was playing basketball, and I was going from being like this 95-pound freshman trying to beef up and get stronger and better, and so it would be like, got up at 7:30 and ran 3 miles and shot 500 free throws, and then later I did and then it started turning into this thing where you start talking about what went on in the day, what was interesting in the day, your feelings about certain things, and maybe I would start writing down quotes or little pieces of something that I thought was clever. I'd have like whole pages that were just quotes. Some of it was like motivational stuff. Some of it was just stuff that made you think and twisted your head a little bit. And so how that relates to where, when I started writing was I did fairly well writing papers and all that through high school and college. But when I took this professional nonfiction writing course, my professor immediately kind of pulled me aside and said, you're good at this. You're actually really good at this. And he encouraged me. I wrote stuff for little Hollywood magazines, various little magazines that probably aren't even alive anymore, as a stringer. So I was just a freelancer. I'd go into story meetings. I'd pitch an idea. Maybe they would like it, maybe they wouldn't, or they'd hand me something to do. Like, we really need you to go down to Spago tonight because Kirk Russell's going to be there, or some star's going to be there. It's just, my heart wasn't really in it, but I knew that I had a little bit of a talent for writing. Meanwhile, I'm doing this during the day, and I've got like a little Dan Electro or a Telecaster or something in the trunk of my car, and I'm going out to these blues clubs at night, and I'm watching blues bands, and on the break, I'm running out to my car, grabbing my guitar and sitting in the back of my car and trying to learn what I had just seen.
Ah, so you had the fever.
Oh, I totally had it, because my senior year of college, some friends of mine were in a band when I was in college, and every once in a while I'd go to a party and they'd be playing. I'd pick up somebody's guitar, and I knew a little bit of guitar. And dude, you play. Dude, why don't you play with us? I was like, no way, because they have this guy named Roy Bauer was playing. He was a year ahead of me, and he was a great guitar player. I had no way I was going to even pick up a guitar around that guy. He was a monster. Well, he graduated, and my other friends were still in the band, but they needed another member. So me and my friend Tom Nevins joined this band at the same time. Tom was a really good singer and guitar player, and I just played guitar and barely sang. And we played these parties and played for beer, had a ball, and I totally got bit by it. I mean, I just got bit big time. So started going out to all these clubs, seeing people play, and then trying to do, you finish college and you think, man, I got to do something responsible. I can't all of a sudden decide to go and be a musician. This is crazy.
You know what? I agree with you, man, that's a big problem, because I think, and we're the only country, I think, that does that, where, I appreciate very much the achievement ability of the U.S. offers, that anybody can come here and basically do anything with rare exception if you work hard enough, and serendipity is involved in some of this stuff, of course. But, if you have a good work ethic, but you don't need to get started as early. I think more, I think freedom to be a kid is important, or freedom to enjoy life is important.
Yeah. And now you just got to figure out, like my dad used to tell me, Rick, do what you love. If you're doing what you love, it won't be work. And he did what he loved, and he worked his ass off, but he loved it, and it was just fun for him. And I've done the construction jobs, like in the summer when I worked at a truck stop one summer, and I know what it's like to show up at work at 6:37 in the morning, and the look on those guys' faces who are doing this for a living, who just have death in their eyes, Yeah. And I didn't want that. I mean, seriously, I worked long hours on these Alaska construction jobs, knowing I can't do a job like this. I can't do something that's just a job. I have to find it. But finding that thing, so, all of a sudden there I am, 21, 22, 23 years old. I'm trying to be this, I'm getting some bylines in National Magazine, and my friends and my family think this is really great. But in the meantime, my heart is in music, and I'm burning it on both ends big time, just trying to get better, just thinking if I could just get in a band, that would be so much fun, And so the first few years were very confusing, but a lot of fun too.
What was holding you back from just saying, screw it, I want the band?
Well, so at first I just wasn't any good.
Right.
And then I hooked up with William Clark. He took me on the road, and I was trying to do both things. I was doing both things, and it was just too crazy. I finally had to pick one. And, 4 years of going to a private school, I had huge student loan debts. And it took me forever as a musician to pay those back. I mean, it really took me a long time. And Alaska has a great student loan program, but even so, it was not the prudent decision, but it was a heartfelt decision. And so that was basically what held me back. Was I wasn't any good, and then finally when I got the gig, it was just like, man, I just spent all this money on getting a college degree, and now I'm going to get in a van. I'm going to sleep on people's floors. The first van that I was in with William Clark, it didn't have seats in the back. Like we would bring bean bags and lawn chairs. And, really drafty, like driving up to Canada, to Edmonton and Calgary, and the heater's on full blast and you can barely feel it, and it's the winter.
You should have been used to that, man.
we were playing in strip clubs in Vancouver and Calgary, like a week at a time. You would play, a strip club would be connected to a club, and we'd be playing the music side of it, but there were strippers walking up and down the stairs, dripping wet with towels wrapped around them, after their show, going up to a day room to kind of relax until they had to go to their next show. I mean, I'm 23 years old. I'm just like full on, it was nuts, but I was loving it.
Yeah. Was your, I'm assuming your wife or your girlfriend then to be wife was supportive?
Yeah. I mean, I would call her up and go, hey, this is crazy. You're not going to believe it. But, got done with the gig and I'm walking down the hall to my room, and there's like a bloody drunk guy passed out outside my room.
Nice.
Wow, really? Well, I mean, we were both raised like, middle class. It was like just kind of going into this dark, seedy underbelly of music, and I loved it. There was never, because of the type of music that I got into, which is blues, like the bands, I had was never thinking about stardom. I was never thinking about playing some of these gigs that I eventually ended up playing. It was because I loved this crazy, weird, idiosyncratic music. And I loved the really esoteric forms of it. Never thinking that it was ever going to lead to, Austin City Limits or, meeting the president or anything like that. It's just it's crazy how it all happened.
Let me ask you this: were you drawn to blues right away when
Yes.
you first started playing? Okay, so this is, and you don't have to answer this question if it's too personal. I always feel, and I love blues. That's all I play, and not since that's all I play. That's what makes me feel the most. Whether it's an Albert King solo or Freddie King or listening to David Gilmour, who's playing pentatonic stuff, I always feel that blues players have some sort of pain or emotions that are sort of at the heart of their playing, and sometimes even at the core of their soul. Mind you, I'm not saying these are like twisted emotions or, you're abused, horrible pain. But I do believe there's this connection with blues that exercises sort of something in us. And I was curious, in your case, what do you think you're working out, or what are you exercising through playing blues?
That's a great question. It's a mysterious thing. I don't know.
Very.
A lot of times people hear the word blues and they think, okay, 3 chords. Well, it can be 1 chord. It can be a 1-chord Howlin' Wolf or John Lee Hooker type of vamp. It can be 2 chords, which is a lot of like soul and R&B songs are 2 chords, or 6 chords. But I think that doesn't matter. It's the feeling that it evokes in the player and the listener. For myself personally, maybe there's some things that when I was just before I joined with William Clark, it was 1988, and I was still trying to do music and writing, together, and it was an election year. And my dad, a little backstory for you. My dad was a DJ when I was a little kid. Then he moved into TV. He did like the 6 o'clock, the evening news, the local broadcast, and then he was always
he was like an anchor.
In our little town, and he made radio spots and TV spots, and he worked for a governor up there, like writing speeches and helping run his campaign. This governor named Jay Hammond, and he had in the last few years of his life, he had his own video production company, and he was producing this, it was sort of like a Charles Kuralt on the road type of show with this ex-governor, Jay Hammond. He was a beloved governor. He's the governor that started the permanent fund dividend. I don't know if you've heard of that, but they take Alaskan oil royalties, and they pay a certain amount to every year an Alaskan citizen, or someone who lives in Alaska for a certain amount of time gets a check from the state government. So you share in the royalties from the oil money. And he started that program, and this governor. Anyway, so I went up to Alaska. My sister, my younger sister Marcy, and I both went up there and worked for my dad because he was swamped, and it was a really busy year for him. And so I was doing things like trying to write stories for magazines on one hand, trying to practice guitar on the other hand, and then looking at raw video footage that my dad had shot and like indexing, okay, at 0180, so-and-so talks about such and such, so that he could go through it and edit it later.
Wow, that's a very minutia-oriented job. That's had to be tedious.
Yeah, but it was cool, And my wife came up, or my girlfriend at the time, Tony, she came up with me, and we were having a wonderful summer up there. And there was a trip to Juneau, the state capital, that I really wanted to go on. But there was also a whitewater rafting trip that my dad and this ex-governor were going to go. Basically, they would go around and they would find these interesting Alaskans, like bush pilots or people that, just with really interesting stories, and they do little segments on them.
That's cool.
And it would air a few times, a month or once a month or something like that. I don't remember. But anyway, so I was hoping to go on this whitewater rafting trip, but my dad decided that he wanted me to go to Juneau, and he wanted to take my sister with him. And a tragic thing happened on this trip. My dad, my sister, and a cameraman all passed away in an accident on the river.
Oh my God! I'm so holy crap! I'm so sorry.
Yeah, I mean that was 19. You know, it's been a long time. It was 1988. It's a long time ago. So, you know, you bring up this question of like what goes into your playing. I mean, nothing like this can happen to somebody, and they could be the most soulful, amazing, deep musician you've ever met, or horrible things can happen to them and they can be a really square, lame musician. I don't know what I was already playing the music. I was already bitten by the bug, but maybe at that point, I think maybe those, you know, Rick, do what you love. It'll never seem like work. And my sister Marcy, who also passed away, I can remember her telling me, you know, trying to encourage me to do what I loved. So it was right after that I came back to California and just decided, you know, I really got to dive into this and see what I've got. Yeah.
Wow. Wow, that's pretty intense, man. Thank you for sharing that. That is really
yeah, I mean, you know, it's life. It is. It's what happens. It's like people. This happens to people all. I mean, I'm as a father now because I know this happens. I mean, there's people in the Middle East or in Africa or wherever. Just every day of their life is that.
Yeah.
And so we're lucky that we don't have that kind of thing all the time here. But I'm constantly aware that it can happen. And might happen, and maybe that, you know, right at that point when I was 23 years old, it was like, boom, I could die tomorrow, and so I'm going to do what I want to do right now.
Yeah, well, I'm sure also, you know, reflecting back on your dad's comment, I've got to believe that. You know, you doing what you wanted is, in a sense, you know, honoring that connection, that relationship you guys had, and his, you know, guidance to you, his support and encouragement of you, basically.
Well, you know, it's like both parents. My mom also, you know, she, you know, when they got married when they were, I think they were 19 and 20. That's how it went. You know, Catholic, you know, you got married and boom, 9 months later, a kid popped out, and that was me. And, you know, so my mom had me when she was 20 years old, and they were very responsible, hardworking people that got right down to it. You know, my mom worked in the family business selling boats and snowmobiles. It's still going in Fairbanks, right?
That's awesome.
My cousin runs it, one of the biggest snowmobile businesses in the world, called Compos. Little plug.
There you go, Compos. Get your snowmobiles at Compos and tell
That's
them.
Right.
You
them, sound like you know what you're doing, man.
Tell them Rick sent you, and we'll give you a free winter cap.
When I was little, I actually was in some of the ads, the TV ads up there for the you know, snowmobiles and things like that. But anyway, so my mom was constantly working through, you know, three kids. She worked she sold Tupperware and Avon and all kinds of stuff like that. And after she worked at the family business, and then she started working for the state elections office. She spent a long time doing that. She rose up to be like the number one person in Anchorage at her job. So she used to travel a lot to the villages and try to make sure that they had the proper voting machines and voting information, and trying to make sure people got registered and things like that. She worked her tail off. And so while they're very, like, it's a hard world, you know, like when your grandparents come up from Minnesota, Michigan, you know, they kind of did that whole like thing, moving up the Midwest into the Northwest and then up into Alaska. They're very hardworking people. So for somebody to all of a sudden in the family spend all this money and effort on getting a college education, graduating from college, I think I was the first person in my, to graduate. My dad went to college for a few years. My mom went for a little bit. And all of a sudden to just irresponsibly say, I'm going to go off and play music.
Sure. I totally get the struggle, man. Now I was
totally a flake. I mean, they were supportive of me, but I'm sure they were rolling their eyes a little bit and waiting for me to grow up and get through this phase. And I don't blame them at all. But as a dad,
sorry, I apologize.
No, go ahead. I'm sorry. I'm just blabbing on and on.
No, are you kidding me? You're far from blabbing on, man. This is very kind. One of the things I love about talking with musicians is that I'm a guy that struggled with being vulnerable most of my life, and in many ways doing this show has been like a healing process for me, because it's in talking to many people, and musicians tend to be more vulnerable and open to sharing. It has really helped me become more vulnerable and open to sharing, to be honest with you. So you are far from blabbing away. I mean, you just let everybody in on a life not crisis, but a shitty life event. And like you said, we've all got them. In one way or another. I always say, nobody gets out of here unscathed. Life is not for the weak. But no, man, you're not blabbing on, so don't think that for a second. But I could totally understand this like struggle now of, what I was going to say is, as your girls are young, aren't they? They're like 8 and 12 or something?
No, now they're 15 and 11.
Okay. You're going to see that what your folks did with you is the best strategy around. Like, they probably didn't think, oh, he'll get over this. They knew they have to support you. That's what you do, and I'm here for you if you need me, and I'm here for you if you want to change your mind. But I mean, I've had to do that with all my kids, and it's not easy.
Right.
At times.
You're right. They were like that. I probably make it sound like it just was probably a little bit of a crazy thing, but they were very supportive. And and then my dad was gone. He never saw me play. He saw me. The guitar for me was like a toy that I had in my room when I was a kid. It was just there was a basketball, football, baseball bat, and a guitar.
Right.
But it wasn't really until that last summer that I spent with him that he saw me playing a little bit more around the house, but he never saw me play a gig or anything like that. So it was basically my mom and my sisters after that point, and I was old enough to do what I wanted. I had scored a rent control apartment in Santa Monica, California from a friend, another journalist who moved around the corner and gave me this rent control apartment. And my girlfriend, who's now my wife, Tony, and I lived in that place for about 10 years. I tell you this, it was 5 blocks from the beach.
Wow.
And it was when I moved in 1988, it was $237.81, $237.81, and it went up to just around $400 when I moved out.
Holy smokes! That's the deal of the lifetime, man.
Yeah, I scored. So I didn't have a big, nut to pay I didn't have a mortgage or a giant rent payment. I bought an old Ford Falcon car, 64 Ford Falcon. And I just immediately went on the road. This guy, William Clark, I think he saw potential. He saw drive. He saw that I was a good rhythm guitar player. And so I got hired basically to play rhythm behind him and this other guitar player named Zach Zunis. And I just went on the road. We were on Alligator Records, and Alligator Records is all about their artists touring constantly. And that's what we did. And, I just took the work ethic that I got from my mom and my dad and from my basketball years, and I had a little Walkman. Remember those?
Yeah, of course. Loved it.
And I had cassette tapes with Little Walter, Sonny Boy, Muddy, Jimmy Rogers, T-Bone Walker, Robert Jr., on and on and on. And I would put on these little headphones and practice, because everybody in the band was way better than me. And so just to even hang on the bandstand, I had to practice constantly. And that's what I did.
Wow. Awesome story, man. Thank you very much for sharing that, man. That whole thing is great. How did you hook up with, you had a couple of guys that are just like legend, you've worked with a lot of legends actually. Billy Boy Arnold and R.L. Burnside. What's the backstory to hooking up with those two dudes?
Well, all that stuff was I did like 3 years with William Clark. And then I left that band and I started just working locally. And it was end of 1991. I got a job, like a part-time job in a running shoe store, because I'm a runner too. And I didn't want to go. I wanted to stay home for a little while. And I didn't want to take the first gig that came along, the first touring blues band gig. And there was 3 or 4 people called me and asked me to go on the road with them. But I didn't want to do that. I wanted to take stock and kind of figure out, like, what do I want to do? I want to make this count. So I was really lucky. This job was part-time, and I remember bringing a little Dan Electro, and I'd hide it in the back where all the shoes were. It was really slow and the boss was gone. I would pull that Dan Electro out, and I'd practice, and I'd keep my eye on the front door. And as soon as somebody came in, I'd set it down and go, help them out, find their shoe size. And so I was doing that during the day. And then at night, there was a promoter here named Randy Chortkoff that was bringing a lot of Chicago and Louisiana, Texas acts out to LA. And he used me as part of the backup band. And so I backed up Billy Boy. I played on his comeback record on Alligator Records called Back Where I Belong. And I backed up, Big Daddy Kinsey, Lefty Diz, Snooky Pryor. Who else did we back up? A lot of people would come out, and we'd do like maybe 3 gigs or 5 gigs or something, play all like San Diego, Long Beach, LA, Hollywood, maybe, Santa Barbara or something like that.
Any cool, sorry, I apologize, Rick.
No, any cool. Well, cool. I mean, Billy Boy, I had seen Billy Boy before. I was in Chicago with William Clark, and we had a night off, and we went to Buddy Guy's club. And I'm standing there with Bill Clark, and this guy comes in with this cool hat and this overcoat, and Billy Boy was sort of like he had disappeared to us. Like, what happened to Billy Boy Arnold? He was so cool, and he just disappeared, And Bill goes, "That's Billy Boy Arnold." And I remember Junior Wells was there that night, and Billy Boy Arnold was there, and the Myers brothers, Dave and Louis, were there, and it was just this incredible little jam session kind of thing that happened at Buddy Guy's club. And I met him that night, and then so I had a little something to talk to him about when I did finally back him up on some gigs and recordings and stuff. And he was a sweet guy. He was a sweet guy, but he didn't suffer fools. Like if you didn't know his material, which was the same thing with like Smokey Wilson, this guy that I used to back up here in LA. You had to know the idiom pretty strong. You really had to have done your homework. Now, once you got on the bandstand, then the whole thing about it was creating within that idiom. you had to, it wasn't like you were, the 45 of Juke by Little Walter goes like this. It's this progression first. No, it wasn't like that. It was, but you had to know the bag.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so if you knew the bag, even if you messed up a little bit or you were not quite right, they might pull you aside. And I mean, I saw Billy Boy, savage a drummer one time for not having done his homework. I mean, and I had seen Smokey do that same thing,
I've never heard that. He savaged a drummer.
Embarrassing. Oh man. Or like, I got to tell you this. My first professional gig with William Clark was at the Belly Up in Solana Beach, California, down by San Diego. And we were slated to open up for Albert King.
That's a pretty awesome first professional gig.
Pretty awesome, yes. So we show up like maybe 6:30, 7 o'clock, ready to do sound check. And so I see Albert, and he's smoking that pipe, and he's a giant guy, and his bus is parked out back and everything. And I'm thinking, man, wow, it's freaking Albert King. This is amazing. And Albert is pissed. And the promoter's running around, and finally the promoter comes over to Bill Clark and says, Albert's contract says he's supposed to go on at 7 o'clock. It's a Sunday night, and he's going on at 7 o'clock. He wants to move on to the next city that he's got to go to. So Albert wants to go on first. So Albert King opened the first show that not technically, but he really did.
Go figure.
Before us. And I can remember Albert standing there. He must have just picked up this woman on keyboards. She was standing up. She had like one of those like Dave Clark 5 kind of scenarios going on with her electric piano standing there. And he's playing, and he's sounding amazing like he always did. But he keeps looking at her to take a solo, and she wouldn't take a solo. And, he wants a little help, and she doesn't realize, she's probably thinking, no, I'm just gonna stay in the background and, be the supportive. Well, you got to be ready to step out and help the guy, help the main person. And so at one point Albert says on the mic, he goes, "Where'd we get you, Sears and Roebuck?"
You're kidding me.
No.
In front of everybody, he turns to
full house, giant club, the Belly Up. It was just like you could just, I felt so bad for the woman, but you knew wow, this is serious business to these people. This is, it's fun and games, and we're selling whiskey and beer and all that kind of stuff. And, but there's a deep bedded, think about how intense it had to have been between Albert and Freddie and BB and Otis Rush, and their music meant a lot to them.
Wow, what a story! Thanks, man.
Yeah.
You've been in this game a long time now. If you had to go back, Rick, and give advice to your younger self, what advice would you have given? Assuming you were willing to accept it.
Advice to my younger self. I would say breathe, Yeah. I mean, that's something I didn't really learn until my 40s,
Let go. You mean don't be so stressful?
Yeah, just take your time a little bit. I was in such a hurry always about this stuff and about life in general. And it was just, it's going to happen. Life is going to happen. You got to take some really long, deep, slow breaths and just let it happen and smile and have a drink or whatever, go for a hike, whatever you got to do to get past whatever this, it's like some people will say, this too shall pass, or I worry about all these things that never happen anyway, the great Tom Petty line. And it's so true. We all, when I was in my 20s and even my 30s, I was trying to get so much done, trying to produce records, trying to build my chops, trying to build my reputation, trying to get the good gigs and all that. I could have taken a few more days and just said, I'm going to go surf somewhere or something. It took a while. It was in my 30s and 40s before I finally started to chill a little bit.
You're pretty chilled out now. Like, how are you with your girls?
I'm good. I think I'm good. It helps having a gig like Mavis. I don't have to be, I'm not booking. I spent a lot of time sitting on the edge of my bed in Santa Monica with the phone attached to my ear. I mean, I damaged my back and my neck for years, I think, because I was booking tours.
Right.
And I was booking tours for Johnny Dyer. After I left William Clark, I started playing with this guy, Johnny Dyer. I started producing records because I just wanted us to get some gigs with Johnny. So I took him into the studio and paid for these sessions and made a cassette tape that I was going to send around. Oh, I did send it around to clubs trying to get us work. But my friend Rod Piazza, I played it for him, and he said, "Man, you got to send this to Hammond Scott at Blacktop Records down in New Orleans." And I did. I sent it to him like the middle of like Wednesday or Thursday, and the next Monday morning, Hammond called me at like 8 a.m, woke me up.
Wow!
And he said, "Hey, this Rick is Hammond Scott from Blacktop Records. I want to sign y'all. And boom, just like that.
And you're like, yeah, I have a marketing degree from the University of the Redlands. Right on, man.
So it was like immediately I had to buy a van. I had to get busy booking the tours. I had some help here and there, but I was basically booking it. And, there was a few years there where I could barely get enough practicing in to just even get on stage and feel like I had any chops because I was doing so much band leader, booking agent, producer, songwriter type of stuff. And I wish that, I had been able to just say, hey, you know what, let's step away for a day and let's go up into the mountains and just go for a walk for 3 or 4 hours.
Yeah, that stuff is important, and it tends to get neglected. I did myself for sure. So I know the sense of urgency that comes with wanting to do well. There's a little bit of a price you pay for it. That's not really a bad thing, but you definitely pay a price.
Yeah.
Hey, let's talk about gear for a few minutes. I usually see you playing a Tele. Is that your number one? Yeah,
it has been now. I mean, I've always had a soft spot for Telecasters. I think it must be pictures of Keith Richards and Roy Buchanan and, Gatemouth Brown and stuff like that. I'd see these cool pictures of guys like that with these beat up old Telecasters, and I always had this thing for them. But early on, I was playing archtops. I was playing like weird Harmony, Silvertone K.
Oh, I love those. Oh, I love those, man. Those Harmony Silvertones are just awesome. So, the Stratatones I like.
Yeah, the Stratotone. I started playing I kind of have a little history with Stratotone. I don't know if you know about it.
No, I don't, man.
Yeah, I mean, okay, so the Stratotones were, most people, when you go back to when they first came out, you think about Ritchie Valens, maybe you think of there's a picture of Howlin' Wolf with a Strat, or Jody Williams playing with Howlin' Wolf with a Stratotone. What's his name? Carl Perkins, before he got a Gibson guitar, had a Stratotone. And then they just disappeared. They weren't cool. They were, I can remember seeing Stratotones sitting, hanging from the walls of funky guitar shops or pawn shops. And then I was playing with Rod Piazza, and we were flying a lot. We were just doing these, going over to Europe or going to the East Coast for a couple of gigs and coming right back. And And my preferred guitar at the time was a big Gibson ES 150, big, huge archtop.
That's a jazz box, though, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, but it's not a carved top, so it's like a little bit more of like a economy model, but a big guitar. And I couldn't just put that in the overhead, and if I tried to check it, I might break the headstock or something like that. So I knew I had to find something. And I went to this guitar show at the Santa Monica Civic. I saw this Les Paul Special, and oh man, it was beat to hell, big neck, lightweight. I thought, I got to get this. And the guy wanted $1,800, and this was like 1996 or 7, and I offered him $1,500 the next day, and it was already gone. Like he had sold it at the guitar shop. Damn!
Why was that so much money back then?
It was still a Les Paul. I mean, think about it now. It was like a 50.
Oh, I didn't know that part. I thought you said Les Paul Special. I thought it was a modern.
No, this was this is before they even reissued stuff like that. It was a great one, and I missed out. And so then I'm in Oakland a month or two later, and I go to this shop in Oakland, and I see 2 copper-colored Harmony Stratotones hanging next to each other on the wall. One of them is brand spanking new looking, and one of them is beat to hell and it has the guts hanging out of it. And so I pick them up, both of them. I play them. I'm thinking, this is kind of a cool little guitar, but they wanted like $300 for the good one and $275, I think it was, for the beat up one. And I passed. And then I went and did like a couple more months of gigs. And then we went back to Oakland, and I went to the shop, and there's the beat up one hanging there. So I pulled it down, and I was like, okay, this is a cool guitar. I kind of dig this. So I bought it for $260, and I took it to our gig that night, and I taped the guts like with duct tape up to the back up to the guitar. I plugged in. I'm thinking like, I'll probably have to put some P90s or something in this guitar to make it happen. And, but let's just see what it sounds like. I mean, literally from the first note, everyone in the band looked at me and went, what? And so I started playing that guitar, and then a bunch of friends of mine like Junior Watson, Smokey Hormel got these guitars. And then that branched out because of who they played with, like Tom Waits and Mark Rebo and people like that started playing them. So I was kind of the guy that brought them back in a way. And then I used a Telecaster and a Stratotone with Mavis for the first few years. And then I just got tired of people coming up to me after gigs and pointing to the guitar, the Stratotone, and going, you're playing that because of Rebo, huh? Or you're playing that because of Smokey, aren't you? And I wouldn't say anything. I just go, yeah, I wouldn't say much. And our drummer, Stephen Hodges, would be back there tearing down his snare drum or something, and he'd get pissed off, and he'd go, man, Rick's the guy that started this.
Yeah.
It was kind of like, okay, forget it, man. I don't want to play these guitars anymore. I'm going to bring the most ubiquitous guitar there is on the planet, a Fender Telecaster, and I'm going to make it work for the whole gig. So that's
your history. What's your primary Telecaster? It looks like a vintage one.
Yeah, I have an old Blackguard that I got about a year and a half ago. I'd been playing a bunch of parts guitars and custom shop guitars, and I threw together a whole bunch of Tellies out of parts, and some of them were really good. And then, I played a 52, a beat up 52 at a shop in Brooklyn, fell in love with it, but couldn't afford it. Made a couple of offers, but I lost that one. And so then I started selling a bunch of gear, and we were touring with Bob Dylan that summer, and so we were doing a lot of work, and so I sold a bunch of stuff, and finally I found this kind of beat up Blackguard and was able to buy it.
What year is that?
It's It's ridiculously old. It's 53.
Wow.
But there's a little bit of question about the body. It's an odd one. It's the guy I bought it from told me that he bought it like 20 years ago from a mariachi player across the street from the Hollywood Bowl.
That's a great story.
Yeah.
That automatically gives it like extra dollar value because of the character.
I call it the mariachi. I mean, and the story was that the mariachi player told him that in the 50s he took it to his high school woodshop class and stripped the finish or sanded the finish or something on the body down to the wood because he wanted it to be more like wood colored, like the same color as the neck. But the bizarre thing about it is I've taken this guitar to a bunch of different luthiers, and I've had a fret job done and some pickup work, wiring work done or whatever, and I tell them the story and they're looking at it and they flip it over and back and go like, dude, I don't think that's right. I don't think this thing has been refinished. I mean, you can tell. I haven't had the guitar blacklighted. I should do that. And then the other thing about it was somebody took a look at the neck pickup on it and told me that he thought that this pickup expert guy told me that he thought it was a pickup from a broadcaster because it had something different about the diameter of the magnets on the neck pickup was a little thicker, like under the cover. And so there's this crack that runs up from the truss rod adjustment screw at the base of the neck up about 3 frets underneath the frets in the fingerboard. But it doesn't affect playability or stability or anything. So the pickups had been rewound, but they sound amazing. Ron Ellis did an amazing job on those. And so that's why I was able to afford this guitar, because it scared off all the serious money people.
Yeah.
The guy was getting all these low ball offers, and I came in a little bit over the low balls and was able to do it.
Do you know a guy named Red Volkart?
Yeah, I don't know him, but he's amazing. Yeah,
and he's the guy who will know that guitar. No, I'm serious. If you're in Austin or if you get show Red, he has been tinkering intensely, like opening Telecasters for like 50 years. And he's brilliant with that. So if you if you ever run into him, have him look at it. I bet you he can give you some insight as to exactly what's going on there.
I should. Yeah, Red. I remember having a night off in Austin years ago, and I saw him play with this yodeling singer. I forgot what his name was. This country singer's amazing yodeler, and there's Red sitting there on a stool playing a telly, blowing our minds.
Yeah, he's like not normal. He's like outer worldly, but he's also a great guy. But you ask him, he'll know. He's brilliant with that. He's repaired every telly. He's really sharp, and he knows tellies.
I should. I also saw Red play with Merle Haggard. Yeah, which was amazing. Yeah,
he played with Merle, I think, for 3 years. He did records with him. He was on tour with him, and yeah. So you have your 53. Do you have like a couple of other guitars that you go to, or is it just the 53 telly?
Well, mostly I just been traveling with that, and when I'm able to bring, I used to carry 2 guitars around all the time. One of them was tuned down a whole step, but sometimes we fly so much, and I'm carrying 2 Telecasters in a gig bag on my left shoulder, just kind of wore me out. So most of the time I just bring one. I still have my original Stratotone, the copper one. I have another parts Telecaster that's great. I have an old 58 Dan Electro U2. I have a couple of arch tops, but I'm not really a guitar collector. I've got less than 10 guitars, and I've got maybe 5 or 6 amps. And part of that is, I've had so many things, and I've sold them over the years, like to buy a van to tour in, or we just remodeled our house, so I sold some stuff, and I'm kind of like I'm experimenting with Gibsons now. I've had some experience with Les Pauls and 335s recently, and I'm kind of gearing myself up to get something like that, because I did a session a little while back where the producer, I was playing like a week straight. We were staying in this farmhouse outside of Charlottesville, Virginia, making a record for somebody, and I brought my Telecaster, and about halfway through the week, I was hitting my head against the wall on this one song. I couldn't think of something that worked for it, and he just let me put a different guitar in your hands, and he put a gold top with mini humbuckers. And it was like, you mean I can do that? Like, well, oh yeah, I can use another guitar. That's right. And it was the yin to the Telecaster's yang. It gave me a different thing it just opened up. So I need to get something like that. Yeah.
It's a pretty versatile Gibson, man. And I don't know why it's not, is the SG.
Oh yeah,
man! I have it's a newer guitar. It's like, I don't know, 2011 or something, or 14, something like that. But the year I'm not a big guy. I'm big wide, but I'm not big tall. I'm only 5'9", and so I have average size hands. So I like a thin neck, and this is like a reissue of a 61. Man, this guitar is like, it's got such broad. It's got classic 57s, and I'm a guy who uses the tone knobs a lot. I like that. And, man, you just get such a diversity of sound, especially with those 57s. And I don't know, I really love them. I really love that guitar.
It's cool. I have to check those. I mean, I'm just now educated. I feel like a kid again. It's really been fun.
Great.
Yeah, I mean, people have been loaning me their Les Pauls or their 335s and bringing stuff to gigs sometimes. I'll just go, yeah, I'll play it.
Good.
And, you get a chance to, humbuckers. Oh. I mean, P90s I'm very familiar with because I had so many hollow bodies that had them. But the humbucker thing is a whole new thing to me, and it's kind of cool because it's just so different than the Telecaster.
I prefer humbucker sound personally. I just love it. I'm more of a mid-range British blues. That's the sound I love, and so I'm,
Cool.
Musically, if I asked you to pick your top 3 Desert Island discs in no particular order, knowing this can change tomorrow, what would be the top 3 albums that come to mind right now?
Oh wow! Well, okay. There's this record by Lightnin' Hopkins where I always call it Lightnin' on Herald. Herald was a record label, but it's been reissued in so many different forms. But it's basically Lightnin' Hopkins playing electric guitar with bass and drums, and then they put all this echo on various, not on every song, but there's this really cool slapback on stuff. And that record, sonically and feeling wise, just slays me. I was driving back from Bakersfield last night after a gig, like a 2-hour drive home. That's the first thing I reached for to listen to on the way back. Then another record that there's so many records, but I'm going to try to avoid ones that you probably hear a lot. Okay, maybe I'll do that.
You know what? You just said, when you said I was driving back from Bakersfield, that's a Stones song, isn't it? I was driving back from Bakersfield. Isn't it? Like I
don't know. It could be.
It's a country Mick song, yeah.
I'm sure George Marinelli would know. Let's see. The other one I would say is Robert Nighthawk. The record is called Bricks in My Pillow. And it's just this really cool sounding, roomy after hours record. It sounds like there was a good deal of whiskey involved and super loose. I just love the vibe on that record. And then I guess I would go with like the Staples Singers VJ stuff, like Uncloudy Day and Sit Down Servant and all those kind of songs. When I was playing with Rod Piazza up so like in the mid to late 90s, I was playing a festival in the Bay Area, and this guy named Charlie Lang, who runs this website called Blue Beat Music, and it's basically like a record store, but you can order stuff online. And Charlie will go to these various blues and roots festivals and set up a tent and sell his records and CDs and stuff. So Charlie is this guy that I mean, periodically I will call or write him and say, can you just send me everything that you think I haven't heard that's new, that's not new, but like reissues. And I'm not much into new, like just give me something you think that Rick's got to hear this. And so he'll mail it to me and he'll send me a bill and I send him a check. Boom, no questions asked. And he always picks out the greatest stuff.
That's cool.
So I was playing in the mid to late 90s and I played this like Magic Sam song and it had tremolo on it. And he says, after the show, he goes, man, for a second there, you sounded a little bit like Pop Staples with that tremolo. And I said, Pop Staples, like the Staples singers? Yeah, all I was aware of was like Respect Yourself, I'll Take You There, Let's Do It Again, the 70s hits. He goes, you haven't heard the VJ stuff? No. So he sent me a cassette tape, which I still have, and I used to drive around like last night after gigs. Like back then you were playing until 1:32 in the morning. You wouldn't get home till 3:34, 4:30 in the morning, sometimes from these gigs. And I would listen to this early Staples stuff when Mavis was very young. And it was just the vibe on it. There's the sound and the spirit and where it takes you. It's like this soundtrack to another world, you know. So those would be three. I mean, tomorrow, like you say, I might pick, you know, something completely different, but.
Is there a name for that Lightning Hopkins one? Because I want to check that out.
I don't know. Let me look at. See, I got it on my phone. I will go into and see what it's called here on my iTunes, because it's been it's been reissued in so many various forms. It's called Lightning and the Blues: The Herald Sessions.
Okay. And,
you know, it's like 16 tracks of just this killer. Like people get all, like, you know, they might see a band playing something like a boogie, you know, just like a little trio playing with some reverby echo on the guitar, and they immediately think it's rockabilly or something. Like I have nothing to do with rockabilly. I can hear Johnny Burnett in his rock and roll trio or something and go, yeah, that's a cool sounding recording. Or I can hear Bill Haley or whatever your version of rockabilly, you know, Elvis, all that kind of stuff. It's never really moved me that much. I hate to have a lot of people are going to get pissed off about this, but like people immediately think that you're playing rockabilly. But to me, it's like I'm playing Lightning Hopkins.
Yeah. No, I get it.
It's rock and roll. You know, it's just like it's Jerry McCain. This was like blues and country and Zydeco or whatever is in the air, and it's morphing into this thing. And they weren't thinking about a label for it or anything. They were just entertaining some people at a house rent party or at a whatever, you know. And so this Lightning Hopkins record to me just encapsulates that whole vibe 100%.
I'm going to check that out. It sounded really cool. I like when you said driving back. When you said I was driving back from Bakersfield, I thought of that song, which is a great blues song. So I said I got to get this now. Hey, tell me something about yourself people would either be surprised to hear or might find a little odd.
Oh. Well, there's a lot of things that I think are odd, but
hey, at least you admit it. Good for you.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know. That's a hard one to. I mean, I guess maybe I like to tell people when they come up to me and they go, like, you're from Alaska. And immediately I go, yes, I was raised by wolves.
Yeah.
That whole idea of being from Alaska is kind of odd to people. I wish I was, I don't, this is a weird thing and I'm not proud of it, but as a musician, I wish I was more curious about modern music. And I'm not going to say this is like any kind of a rant or any kind of like an old guy thing, because I'll be on the road and I'll hear opening bands, or I'll be at a festival, and we've played like Lollapalooza. We're going to play Bonnaroo again this year. We played Coachella. We played all, and I brought my kids to Coachella, and I'll go out to see a band that they like, and sometimes I'll go, yeah, cool. This is I can dig this. I understand where they're coming from. I get this. But so many times the music that I hear in a lot of is so far removed from what got me excited or gave me the feeling, which is basically the African American, or African or Brazilian, Cuban, wherever you want to say it's coming from, thing that came to the South and spread its way north. And so, and I still hear that. Like if I hear Talking Heads, David Byrne, I can hear that in him, because
he's a super rhythmic guy.
Yeah, I mean, I get that he is really into African music. I can hear it, even though you might go like, "Wow, that's a little stiffer and that's a little whiter," but it's there. But a lot of these bands that I hear now, they just don't move me in some weird way, but they move other people, so I get it. And I'm sure that when I was 17 or 15 or something, my dad, my dad and my parents, they loved, like, my first movie that I went to was a Beatles movie. My dad was a huge Elvis and, Everly Brothers and Little Richard and Buddy Holly. And he turned me on. He would hear me playing, the Rolling Stones, or he would hear me playing Led Zeppelin or whatever was popular at the time, and he'd go, that's nothing but a Buddy Holly song. That's a Muddy Waters riff.
How cool is that, as opposed to turn that shit down?
Yeah, I mean, I got a few turn that shit down. If I turned up Aerosmith a little too loud, my mom would get tired of that. But I was like any kid. I was listening to whatever. But when I look back on it now, I remember having a little 45 player and sitting there with a 45 of Honky Tonk Woman and playing it over and over and over and over again. And I still get that same goosebump on my arm when I hear it come on the radio, and that feel that they get going on that's it for me. And I just don't, like, I'll hear or I'll see somebody playing and I just go, I don't get this.
But you don't have to.
This is like, but I wish I did.
No,
That's the thing. I look around for it and I try to find it, and sometimes it happens, but a lot of times it's just like, this is so far removed from what I feel is soulful that I don't get it.
That's it. I understand where you're coming from, man.
And I get, man, I got into hip hop like around the late 90s. Some friends of mine started turning me on to what was then already old school hip hop, like Tribe Called Quest and stuff like that. And I got it, like, oh man, they are sampling soul records, or they're rapping on top of this, and it's really sparse and it's really funky. And I even made a record that where we did that. We kind of like sampled ourselves and made break beats out of, like, that's like the record that I made with R.L. Burnside was the same kind of thing as that. So it's not like I have a closed mind. But it's just maybe like there's this period right now where I just don't get it.
I hear you. What's the best thing that ever happened to you, if that's even an answerable question?
Wow. Best thing that ever happened to me. I don't know, maybe meeting my wife, but I mean, if it's pertaining to music, two things: going for it, deciding to go for it, even though I probably could have been more well off in other, maybe doing other things. I went for it. But I think one thing that maybe if young musicians are listening to this, one of the things that I always think about are the things that didn't happen for me, or the things that I said no to, that I'm glad I said no to, or that you wanted so bad and didn't happen, you didn't get it, and then you look back 10 years later and go, thank God I didn't get that.
Yeah, that's like, what do you call it? The, you can't connect the dots moving forward, and there's always a reason why. I mean, it sounds cliched, but it generally is.
Yeah, I mean, I can think of an instance. I mean, there were a few instances where after I played with William Clark, and like I told you, I got that job in a shoe store, and I just didn't want to go out and play. I wanted to make sure the next thing I did was what I really wanted to do. So I was glad I said no to a few of those things. But then when I started playing with Rod Piazza, I played in that band for 7 years. And that was I don't know if you're familiar with him. But
I'm not. I wrote him down because I want to look at him.
He's a harmonica player, West Coast blues harmonica player. So basically what that means is it's like if you mixed Little Walter and, say, T-Bone Walker, and you sort of come up with this guy named George Harmonica Smith. It's somewhere it's swinging like big band style ideas on the harmonica and guitar, upright bass, piano, like, that kind of drums, like jazzy. And, it's really rooted in 40s and 50s style, like T-Bone Walker type stuff. That was where I came up playing. And so I was playing that gig for 7 years, and about maybe 4 or 5 years into it, I got a call from my friend Smokey Hormel, who's somebody that if you haven't talked to him, you ought to talk to Smokey. Smokey was playing with Beck at the time.
Holy.
And, Smokey's, he's.
You mean Beck, the rap dude, or Jeff Beck?
No, Beck, not Jeff Beck.
Yeah, the sort of
Loser.
Yeah, right.
The song Loser. Yeah.
Was he the guy that did that riff? Was Smokey the guy that did that riff on that?
I think that riff was a sample.
Oh, interesting.
But he probably played it a million times live. But he played on a bunch of Beck's records.
That's pretty cool.
He's played with a lot of people. He played with Norah Jones. He's done a lot. He was on the, Rick Rubin produced Johnny Cash sessions with Mike Campbell.
Yeah.
He was, for a while there, he was like Rick Rubin's. I mean, he played with Neil Diamond, Johnny Cash, the list goes on and on. But Smokey is from Southern California, and he used to play in this band called the Blue Shadows, which morphed into the Red Devils later. And Smokey and I got to be friends. So Smokey's playing this gig with Beck for a few years, and he finally decides that he wants to leave. And he calls me out of the blue and says, man, I'm going to quit this gig, and I think you'd be perfect for this. And I said, Smokey, man, I've heard this guy's name. I know I've heard the song, but I'm just really into playing blues. I'm liking this gig with Rod Piazza. And I think Smokey was kind of taken aback. He's like, really? Like, you're going to, I could put your name in, and you probably get an audition. You might even just get the call. And I turned it down. And then maybe like a year or so later, he called me again and said, okay, I didn't leave last time. This time I'm really going to leave. You want to do this? And I finally had kind of like paid attention a little bit. And I said, well, okay, sure. Maybe and then they never called me, I never got the call, but I was glad years later that I didn't, because a lot of cool things happened after that. You can beat yourself up over the head about stuff that you either missed out on or said no to. A lot of times it's the best thing that ever happened to you. I mean, it might have also been great to play with Beck, but
You just don't know. I don't believe in that. I've had a number of interviews with people, and I've picked this up from a lot of people I've interviewed, and I was kind of on this mindset, but I didn't have it articulated, and it's something like this. I don't like to look at the past and think I've done a mistake, because then I'm actually judging myself, and I'm here, so it doesn't, what does it, kind of matter. So I kind of feel that way, although I know in my own personal life, like there's a couple of things I wish I would have done differently, but man, you just don't know you just don't know the outcome.
Yeah.
It's always easy to say, well, if this would have happened, maybe that way. You don't know. You might have freaking,
Yeah.
There
was. It's a lot of things that happen like that where you just go, well, I mean, no use crying over spilled milk, all that kind of thing. But a lot of times I'll look back at more like I'm glad that didn't happen.
Yeah.
Because, and I'd rather have that attitude than, oh man, if only that, it's worked out just fine.
Right. Plus, then you're living in the past, which never serves you well, ever, ever, ever. I mean, there's nothing to be gained out of that, ever. I don't think.
Yeah, you're right.
For me, anyway. Any hobbies or interests outside of music, Rick?
Yeah, I love hiking and running, and when we go up to Alaska, I like to water ski up at this lake that my wife and my daughters do it too, and those are kind of like my main hobbies. We live close to the beach here in Venice, so I like. We're lucky because we have the mountains and the beach nearby. So, you can go enjoy the water or go up into the mountains, those kind of things. I'm not I don't have some great, fishing hobby or anything like that. I've spent so many decades on the road that a lot of times the things that I do once I get out of a van or an airplane or a bus are usually related to being outdoors.
Yeah, man, I totally get that.
Like camping or hiking, things like that. Skiing, maybe.
2 more questions, man. I genuinely appreciate everything. This has been really nice. Who's had the biggest influence on your life? Person who's had the biggest influence, I should say.
Probably my mom. Really, I mean, if the biggest influence on your life, it's such a subtle thing that, you take for granted, but it's a shaping that goes on, obviously, what can you say? It's your mom. I mean, there's a lot of other people professionally and things like, Junior Watson is a guitar player, another person that would be good to talk to.
I just got referred to him.
Yeah.
He's out in California, correct?
Yeah. He lives in Orange County.
Yeah.
He was a mentor to me and still a really good friend of mine. Musically, he's probably because I saw him play so many times and played with him, recorded with him, and talked with him on the phone. And I think he's about 15 years older than me, maybe more than that. So, it was it was just a storehouse of knowledge. I mean, we got to be friends in 87. So we spent a lot of time. Do you remember the recycle paper? Do you know what that is?
The recycle?
Probably don't.
No.
Recycler was I guess I was thinking it was something that it's kind of like Craigslist, but it was like a weekly paper that came out in California where people would sell things. Yeah. And he would, Thursday morning, Junior would get his paper as soon as the local store opened, and he'd be calling me, and he'd be circling things on it. He'd call me, "Hey, get out of bed, put a comb through your head. I'm coming up, and I'll be there about 9:30 or so." And he'd come up to my place in Santa Monica. We'd jump into one of our cars, and we'd start going. either going to a shop or going to somebody's house, calling them and going, that tweed bassman that you got, I'm interested in it. And so I learned a lot about gear, and then from that and tone, but also it was like all the things that we listened to, the cassettes that we listened to in the car, driving all over the place to pawn shops, guitar stores, people's houses. He's playing me all these really obscure records. Have you heard this? What? What's the matter with you, man? God, you don't know that? Shit, let me play you that.
That's great, man.
Yeah.
So Junior Watson.
Junior Watson, phenomenal guitar player, really unique stylist. When you hear Junior Watson, it's him. It's right off the bat.
Do you know Greg Martin from the Kentucky Headhunters?
I do know Greg. I've only met him once. We're friends from years back. He used to play my stuff on his radio show.
Oh, Monday nights. Yeah, the Lowdown Hoedown.
Yeah. And so then he came out to a show, played, I think, in Louisville or somewhere like that. And we got to be friends. And, occasionally still, we send messages to each other. But our paths haven't crossed. Like, I've never seen him play. I never really got to hang out with him. It's more like an email relationship.
Sure. He's a great human being. I mean, he's just an awesome person, but he turned me on to Junior not too long ago, funny enough.
Great. Right on, Greg. That's cool. I mean, talk about two really unique players. That's a cool thing. Yeah.
And man, last question. What's been the biggest change in your personality over the last 10 years, Rick? And how much of this has been deliberate, intentional on your part, and how much has just been a part of aging?
Well, that probably goes back to that thing about breathing and just relaxing and that kind of thing. I mean, Mavis has had a big influence on all of us, I think. Just because you can't help. But I mean, Mavis is so cool. Here's a story about Mavis. Like, we're playing our first gig with Mavis in 2007, and we don't know what this is going to be like. Her record just came out with Rycooter. I told the guys in my band, like, hey guys, let's go out and do this. This could just be this summer. It could last 9 months, a year, 2 years. They might get rid of us, to do a different record next time around or something. And we didn't know how, because the Staples Singers were a gospel group, we didn't know if she was going to be like a Bible thumper or something like that. We didn't know what that was going to be like. So the first gig, right before the gig, she calls us all in her dressing room. And she puts her hand out in the middle and she says, like, let's have a little moment. She's going to say a prayer.
Right.
And right away, one of the background singers just bolted. I got to go. Like, he couldn't deal with it.
I'm allergic.
So we said, and I grew up, Catholic, 12 years of Catholic school, beautiful people at the church and the school that I went to, but I had enough. I had had enough too. But I understood if she wanted to pray before the gig, I was going to be there for her.
It wasn't out of your. It was not something you would like drive the bus with, but it wasn't out of your comfort zone to participate for someone.
Right.
Else.
I was kind of like, okay, let's see what happens here. I'm game for it either way.
Right.
Whatever's important to her. And so we said this little prayer, and we go and play this gig, and then afterwards she's like, "Holmes, Rick, what's up with him? What was that?" I said, he's a super, super soulful guy, but he just doesn't have any. He runs away from religion. He doesn't want anything to do with that kind of thing. Mavis just goes, "That's cool. Well, we won't do that again."
Oh wow!
Yeah.
Wow.
And she never. He's still with us now singing, and it's like. She
Holy
respected
smokes, that is incredibly cool.
Yeah, I mean, her family, I'm sure they did that from the time she was a little baby singing all the way through up until that point. And she never brought it up again, never forced any of that on us. And so I don't know. I mean, that had an impact on me, and it kind of impacted me right at a time when I was questioning, things and trying to find my way in that. Everybody's, we're all kind of like searching for that thing. And
sure.
I don't know. Maybe
thinking about, should we be searching for that thing?
Right. And am I wasting my time even thinking about? I mean, I go on a lot of long hikes in the mountains whenever I can. It doesn't matter where I am. I'm trying to find a mountain and a trail, and because I can think and just let it go, not think, just breathe. And so for me, to answer your question, it's some kind of combination of that and breathing and stretching and yoga and, it's a cliche, but some sort of mindfulness type of thing. Like a lot of times, I'll tell you a big thing that's helped me, because we play a lot of really high pressure gigs. We've been on TV a bunch of times. Like next weekend, we're playing at the Kennedy Center. I have to play a song with Alison Krauss by myself, just me and her. I've never met Alison. Wow. So the biggest thing, I think this is you can edit. I'm going to give you a couple seconds. Okay, you can edit to the point of what I'm trying to say. This is all a bunch of mumbo jumbo. God, it probably sounds like.
Man, this is about keeping shit real. And if it doesn't listen, I don't know about you and your wife, but I've been with Ann, like I said, a little over 25 years. I can't get her to like everything that comes out of my mouth. So, to worry about what people are going to think, as long as you're genuine and sincere, to me, that's how I respect somebody. I don't expect to agree with everything they say, but if they're genuine and sincere, and you have most certainly been genuine and sincere, it doesn't get edited, man. That's it. This isn't about making everybody happy. It's about learning about you. So
I think the biggest thing I would say is like the thing that your question was, what in the last 10 years is the biggest change or something in yourself? It's breathing. It sounds so simple, but in those really nerve-wracking moments where you're on TV and your solo is just about to start in about 3 seconds, and you're trying so hard not to be the guy who screws it up for everybody else, and maybe you just learn the song. A lot of times, the crazy thing about being on TV is that you record a record, and all the songs are brand new to you when you record them, and then it takes months before the record comes out. Then you have these rehearsals are set up for the beginning of the tour, so you go back and relearn your record, and then boom, there you are, first gig, TV. Our first gig with Mavis was the Tonight Show.
Oh, wow!
Yeah, our very first gig. So I look back on that Tonight Show. And we were playing the song too damn fast and too frantic. And I know that Ry Cooder saw that and thought, what the hell? I thought these guys were good, and we were just all jacked up. And so the biggest thing, and I tell it to my kids, they got a test coming up. They're nervous about this. They just go, breathe. I do it before every solo. Like I take a deep breath in, and then usually what happens is it almost like your soul pours out easier, and if you're breathing, because then you can just let it happen.
Yeah, it is very relaxing.
You're not thinking so much about the technical notes and the spots that you have to hit and everything. It's just like, this is gonna happen, and it's gonna be just fine.
Yeah. No. I'm totally with you on that. I was stressed out the other morning, and I just went out back. I had a cup of coffee, and I said, you know what? I just need to breathe here, man, for like 2 or 3 or 4 minutes, and this shit's going to go away. And that's exactly what happened. And it's so like, it's almost like too, I hate to say that, too easy. Like you're like, wait, I'm supposed to have some struggle along with this. Nope. You just gotta,
I mean, when you're younger, something stressful happens and you strike out, or you think, I gotta stand up for myself, or I gotta stand up for that. And a lot of times, I mean, there's this Japanese saying that, when things like this happen, you take them and you stuff them deep down into your abdomen. I think they call it the hara, H-A-R-A.
Mm-hmm.
And, and you simmer on it, and you let maybe overnight or a couple of days or a week before you take action on them. And I'm sure it sounds like some new age feel good, California beach bullshit, but it's so true. It's if you can take the time, and I didn't know that 10 years ago. I definitely didn't know it 30 years ago. And I struggle with it now. Every day is a struggle, but that would be the most. It doesn't have anything to do with, technical knowledge of the fingerboard, or, we haven't even hardly talked about that stuff. I can't read music. I'm not proud of that. I never learned to read music. I don't know more than maybe like the difference between the major scale and the minor scale. I can hear a scale and go, that's minor, but I don't know if it's Mixolydian or if it's I can hear a diminished chord, but a lot of times I'm just as likely to think it's a demolished chord. I mean, and I'm not necessarily proud of that. It's just the way it happened for me. It's like I went and saw people play. I found old records. I learned from the records, and then I got up on the bandstand and I tried to make it be alive, and that's it. And I'd love to be able to stop the whole merry-go-round. Like my 15-year-old daughter plays viola in her high school orchestra, and so she's been taking piano lessons and viola lessons since she was real little, and there was a period when she first started taking piano lessons that I was going with her to the lessons, and we were going to learn how to read music together. And I thought, this is my chance. I'm going to do this. And then, boom, I went on the road for 3 or 4 weeks. I came back, and she'd already left me so far behind I could never catch up.
You see, I don't look at it like that. I hear that and I'm inspired because I've only been playing guitar a little over 2 years, and I'm very good musically. As a kid, I played saxophone. I played at Carnegie Hall. So I have a really good ear. But I'm 54, man, and I got a lot of shit going on. So I have to look at the when I play, I think I only have an hour maybe. So I have to look at opportunity cost. And, you hear all this theory, and I'm like, and what I say to myself is the cost of me learning theory is not playing, and I'm doing this for fun. I like to play. And so that's what it's about for me. And and so when a guy who's as great a player as you, and I've had tons of players that are great players say the same thing, that's like liberating for me, man. I don't take it as, well, you shouldn't learn theory. It's like, you don't have to, Yeah.
I mean, if you can, great. And it's so cool. Like my daughters were, Santa Monica has this amazing music program in the schools. And so they were learning stuff so young. And all I learned when I was young, I mean, I had a third grade teacher who, bless her heart, amazingly showed me cowboy chords, G, E, C, D, A minor, E minor, that kind of stuff, the first position chords. And so that right there was my gateway to being able to pick up a guitar and go, Barry, how does he do that rhythm? You see, oh, that's it. There it is. So I wasn't scared of it when I picked it up. And, the earlier you can get that experience, the better. But if you don't have it and you're 21 years old and you're just starting to pick up the guitar and your friends are asking you to play with them in their band, well, I don't think you have to stop and go, hold on a minute, I don't know how to read music.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. This should be about fun for me, in my mind, anyway. This is a fun thing, and
yeah, it's like rhythm, melody, rhythm and melody. And those are the things that are going to make drummers happy to play with you, and band leaders want to hire you for the gig, call you up to make the record because you've got good rhythm. Rhythm, that's how I got my gigs. I was just played rhythm my first few gigs, and then finally they started letting me take a few solos, and my solos were rhythmic and simple. So I like the feel this kid has, and then finally I started like stockpiling some ideas and some melodies and licks, to play, and then it kind of came together.
Well, man, I can't thank you enough for your time, Rick. This has been real enjoyable. I appreciate everything that you said, and it was really, really interesting. Quick question for you. You play on the records with Mavis as well?
Yeah, we played on, the records we've played on were the live Hope at the Hideout record was the first record we made with her. Then we made You're Not Alone with Jeff Tweedy producing. Mm-hmm. And that record actually won a Grammy. And then I played on a couple of tracks on the next record called One True Vine that Jeff Tweedy produced. And then we made a record. M. Ward produced a record a couple of years back. Geez, I'm having a hard time remembering. We played on that whole record, and then we just played on her most recent record.
If All I Was Black? That one?
Yeah. And I Jeff Tweedy played more than I did on that record. He produced it, but I'm here and there, like the whole band is like it's like, oh, that's me soloing. Oh, there I disappeared for a while. Oh, there I'm back again playing a fill. So it was kind of one of those records that was made from, I don't know, like drum tracks, and it was layered. It wasn't a live record, the latest one.
Well, cool. Let me tell people where they could find you and how to support you. So everybody, please, first of all, check out Rick's website. It's rickholmstrom.com, HOLMSTROM. And he's going to be playing with the Rick Holmstrom Trio in a place called, I think it's Space in Evanston, yes, Illinois. When is that, Rick?
That would be...
Summertime?
It's June 11th.
June 11th, Space in Evanston, Illinois. Come say hello to Rick. And like I said, check out his website, rickholmstrom.com. Also, if you're going to buy a snowmobile, do it. Was it Compos?
Yeah, that's right.
Get your snowmobiles at Compos, biggest snowmobile dealer in the world. Mention Rick's name and you get a free hat. What are those things called? I'm in Florida. I don't even know. Those big, something that'll keep your head warm.
There you go. Just call it that.
And check out Mavis Staples. They're touring all over the place. They're getting ready. I got a lot of people listening in the UK. They will be touring the South this summer, and then they're going to Manchester, Tennessee, and then Manchester, England. Imagine that. Within the span of a month. Finland, all some really cool places. So support Rick and Mavis. You can find a Rick Holmstrom or the tour dates or Mavis Staples. And go say hello to Rick. He's a super cool guy, and he's a really great blues and soul player. Man, anything I've left out?
No, this is a lot of fun. Like, I appreciate you, and I appreciate George. I think George Marinelli turned you on to me, and it's been a lot of fun talking with you.
Likewise, I feel the same way. I can't thank you for your time enough. And one more time, go to Compos and buy your snowmobiles.
Yeah, right on.
Hey, everybody, thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate it. Please support Rick Holmstrom. Check him out and say hello to him when you see him. And thanks to Rick for spending time with us. I really appreciate it. Go to everyonelovesguitar.com. Sign up to get notified of future episodes along with some early product announcements and discounts. And remember, most importantly, happiness is a choice, so choose wisely. Be nice, go play your guitar, and have some fun. Till next time, peace and love, everybody. I'm out. We hope you enjoyed this show. If you did, subscribe to the Everyone Loves Guitar podcast, and you can do this online at everyonelovesguitar.com or on iTunes. And if you like the show, please leave us a 5-star positive review. The more 5-star reviews we get, the higher our show ranks, and higher rankings mean we get to continue speaking with cool, interesting guests on our show. We'll see you on the next episode, and until then, keep playing your guitar and have fun making music.